The G20 is coming up, and together with that, hardly coincidentally, talks to advance the free trade agreement between India and Britain. These have been underway for some time, and there is now greater energy in taking these forward quite clearly. And we know that Prime Minister Sunak will be in India for the G20 talks, and G20 is the great multilateral platform for promoting trade and talks around trade and the economy. But there will be a move now in parallel to promote trade and economic improvement on both sides between Britain and India together with the G20 summit. The G20 coincides with the 13th round of talks under the FTA, and these clearly have been speeded up in time for the G20. Consider that the 12th round of the FTA talks concluded only last week, and the 13th got underway on Monday this week, very rapidly, quite unprecedented, this kind of speed. The FTA is certain to come up also in the bilateral between the two prime ministers of India and Britain, and they could well seek to nudge these talks past some of the hurdles and obstacles that have come up, as they inevitably would. British Trade Secretary Kemi Badenoch is also expected at the summit, and Indian Trade Minister Piyush Goyal will inevitably be there at the heart of the proceedings. Now, this push towards taking the talks past obstacles is clearly getting a strong push at the very highest level, though Sunak has cautioned on the eve of his visit that there is still some way to go. Most of the negotiations are now complete if you were to go by the list, because agreement has been reached now on as many as 19 of the 26 chapters under which the talks have been carried out, and with further agreement on some of the other matters. But this relatively low-hanging fruit was never quite the issue. The last hurdles could be the crucial ones, and those are not going to be easy to cross. For that to happen, something substantial will have to be gained on both sides, and something substantial will have to give on both sides. These remaining issues are quite crucial. They cover, for instance, the extent of market access. The British are seeking to goods such as Scotch whisky and cars principally. They want higher quotas, lower tariffs for both. On the other hand, India is looking for concessions over the mobility of its professionals to work and live in the UK, though it has never quite been clear to many why India is looking to push more of its brightest and best to the UK in return, apparently, for giving the British a bigger market share for Scotch whisky. It has seemed to many that the British would gain both ways, and hugely. Issues also remain over protection for investment, and the British are particularly keen on this, and they want protection for British firms investing in India, and they say it is the lack of such protection or the insufficiency of such protection that is holding up yet more British investment into India. Technical discussions remain over rules of origin, over what constitutes as coming from where, when there is so much multi-sourcing about, and there are concerns particularly in India over the sourcing of British goods declared to have been made in Britain, but perhaps not entirely made there. There would be discussion on services, whether it's legal services from the UK or IT services from India. Britain has very little to show so far by way of results on Brexit, other than the shortage of goods and labour and higher prices. That promised trade deal with the US proved a non-starter. With India, there have been 12 rounds of talks. With the US, there hasn't been even one, and none is likely. The declared aim between India and Britain is to double trade between the two countries by 2030. The FTA seems the principal tool for doing that, and the meetings around G20 now and the FTA, which is coinciding with the G20, a vital stepping stone towards that end.